This is a little bit more straightforward of a lesson today. We're doing 3-3 day one. What you're going to do is you are going to convert linear equations into standard form into slope intercept form. All right. Your goal in all of these questions today, your goal is to get the y equals all by itself. Right? You're trying to get the y equals all by itself. So sometimes you're going to have to add, sometimes you're going to have to subtract, sometimes you're going to have to divide. All right, it all depends on the individual question. There is no one procedure. I can't give you a step by step procedure because every problem is a little tiny bit different. So you just have to keep in mind your goal is to get the y equals all by itself. Sometimes you're going to have to move the x term to the other side of the equal sign with an opposite sign. All right, you want to get all your x's onto one side and your y's onto the other side. So by doing that, you either have to add or subtract it from both sides. So if it's positive, you're going to need to subtract the x. If it's negative, you're going to have to add the x. You're then going to divide all the terms by y's coefficient. So if it has a number in front of the y, for example, if it had 2y, that really means 2 times y. So you would have to divide by 2 and divide by 2. Just like when you're solving normal equations, whatever you do to one side of the equal sign, you have to do to the other side of the equal sign. There are a bunch of different examples that we're going to do today. There's probably 15 examples that we're going to do today. All right. So if you don't understand what you're doing after the first time, that's fine. All right. We're going to do a whole bunch of examples today. And you're going to try a lot on your own. So taking a look at this first one, our first one says 2x plus 5y equals 15. Now, again, our goal is to get this y all by itself. That's our goal because we want our final answer to look like this. Y equals mx plus b. Your m is your slope. That's also called the rate of change. Your y-intercept is your plus b. Now, y-intercept is really written 0, comma, and then whatever that b value is. If it's a plus b, this would be a positive number inside the parentheses. If this was a minus b, this would be a negative number inside the parentheses with the 0. All right. So if we're taking a look at 2x plus 5y equals 15, we want to try and get this y all by itself. Well, before we get the y all by itself, we have to get the 5y all by itself. So we need to get this 2x to the other side of the equal sign. We get rid of the 2x by doing minus 2x and minus 2x. Those 2x's cancel out. Bring down your 5y, bring down your equal sign. Now, here's where you can't get tricked. You cannot do a plain number minus 2x, all right? 15 minus 2x is not 13x. It doesn't work that way, all right? You can only subtract x's from other x's or plain numbers from other plain numbers. You cannot do a plain number minus a 2x. Now, technically, 15 minus 2x is just 15 minus 2x. However, I'm going to take, because look at the order that these need to be in, right? If we take a look up here, we want our x to come first and then our plus or minus our plain number. So anytime that the plain number comes first, I'm going to take and switch around the order right away. So 15 minus 2x, I'm going to take and switch around the order. That becomes negative 2x plus 15. When you switch around the order, you have to move the sign that's in front of the number with it. So this was a positive 15. That's why it says plus 15. This was a minus 2x. That's why it became a negative 2x, because you have to move the sign that's in front of the number with it. Now, this is not in the correct form yet. Remember, we want the y all by itself, no number in front of it. So this really says 5 times y. Well, the opposite of times is to divide. Now, when you divide, you have to divide each and every term by that number. So we're going to divide by 5, divide by 5, divide by 5. These 5s cancel out. So now on that left-hand side of the equal sign, we're left with y equals all by itself. Now, slope. Slope is the number that comes in front of the x, which is your rate of change. Slope is written as a fraction. Slope is always written as a fraction because when you go to graph lines, the top number in your slope is how many you're going up or down. The bottom number in the fraction in your slope is how many you're going over to the right when you go to graph it. So slope is written as a fraction. Do not change this to be a decimal. All right, do not change this to be a decimal. This is just going to stay -2/5 x. Now, your y-intercept you do want to divide. 15 divided by 5 is 3. It's a positive 3, so I'm going to write +3. So we have now the equation y equals -2/5 x plus 3. Your rate of change, or your slope, is the number in front of the x. So that is -2/5. Your y-intercepts are always written 0, comma, whatever your plus or minus is. So in this case, it's going to be 0, comma 3. That is essentially how you're doing every question. Again, if you didn't understand it yet, that's okay. We're going to do a bunch of these. Remember, this is the format that we want our answer in. We want the y all by itself. In order to get the y all by itself in this first one, we want to get the 9y all by itself. To get that 9y all by itself, we need to get rid of the -4x. We get rid of the -4x by doing +4x and +4x. Those x's cancel out. Bring down your 9y, bring down your equal sign. I want to switch around the order right away. Remember, you can't do 45 plus 4x. You can't add together plain numbers and x's. But we can switch around the order because remember, in our final answer, we want that x value to come first and our plus or minus whatever our plain number is to come second. So I'm going to switch around the order right away to be 4x plus 45. It's a plus 45 because that's a positive 45. Now I have 9 times y. The opposite of times is to divide. So to get that y all by itself, I'm going to divide by 9, divide by 9, divide by 9. These 9s cancel out. Now I have what I was trying for. I have that y all by itself, just like here, I have that y all by itself. You can leave your slope, the number in front of the x, your rate of change, as a fraction. So I'm going to leave that as 4/9 x. And now 45 divided by 9 is positive 5. So I'm going to write plus 5. So there's my equation. Now I just want to identify my slope and my y-intercept. My slope is the number that goes in front of the x. That is 4/9. My y-intercept is 0, comma, whatever my plus or minus is. In this case, it is 0, comma 5. Take a look at the next one. To get this -5y all by itself, I need to get rid of the 3x. I get rid of a 3x by doing -3x and -3x. Those 3x's cancel out. Bring down my -5y, bring down my equal sign. Remember, you cannot subtract these to be 22x. It doesn't work that way. You can't do a plain number minus an x. But I want to switch around my order. I'm going to switch around my order so that my x comes first because I want it in this slope-intercept form. So that becomes -3x plus 25. It's plus 25 because that was a positive 25. Now I want to get that y all by itself. This says -5 times y. So I want to divide by -5, divide by -5, divide by -5. Bring down your y equals. Here's where you need to be careful. Remember that a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So I'm not going to write -3 over -5. A negative divided by a negative is a positive, so I'm going to write positive 3/5 x. Here you need to be careful as well. 25 divided by -5 is -5. So I'm going to write minus 5. There's my equation. The slope is the number that comes in front of the x, so that's going to be 3/5. Your y-intercept is 0, comma, whatever our plus or minus is. It was a minus 5, so I have to write negative 5. Just like over here, it was a plus 5, so I wrote a positive 5. Here it's a minus 5, so I have to write negative 5. Now, the questions are going to look sort of similar and sort of different all at the same time, all right? This time we have a negative number in front of that y. It's fine. We'll do it the same way. We want to try and get the negative 2y all by itself. So I want to get rid of this 6x by doing minus 6x and minus 6x. Those cancel out. Bring down my negative 2y, bring down my equal sign. Negative 52 minus 6x. I can't subtract them, but I want to switch around the order to be negative 6x minus 52. Now I want to try and get that y all by itself. So divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2. So those negative 2's cancel out. So I get my y equals all by itself. Be careful here. Negative 6 divided by negative 2. That is a positive 3x. Right? If you can divide them, you divide them. Negative 6 divided by 2 is positive 3. Negative 52 divided by negative 2 is a positive 26 or plus 26. Now, here's our equation. Slope, I said before, slope can be written as a fraction. Do you have to write it as a fraction if you have a whole number or an integer in front of the x? No. You could write slope as 3, or you could write it as a fraction. An integer as a fraction is that number over 1. So either of those answers would be perfectly acceptable as the slope. 0, comma 26 here. Go ahead and try this next one on your own, please. Go ahead and try the next one on your own, please. So again, the first thing that we want to do is try and get that 28y all by itself. We get the 28y all by itself by doing minus 12x and minus 12x. Bring down your 28y, bring down your equal sign. You can't do negative 84 minus 12x, but we want to switch around the order to be negative 12x minus 84. Notice that I put minus 84 because this was a negative 84. Now I want to try and get that y all by itself. So I'm going to divide by 28, divide by 28, divide by 28. Those 28s cancel out. Now, negative 12 divided by 28, that doesn't go in evenly. I could just leave it as negative 12 over 28. Technically, yes, you could reduce the fraction. All right, we don't need to though. All right, technically you could. You could divide by 2 and divide by 2 to get 6 over 14. We could divide by 2 again and get 3 over 7. All right, so technically we could get 3/7, negative 3/7, but we don't have to do that. We could just leave it how it is. Negative 84 divided by 28 is negative 3. That we definitely want to divide. So my slope is negative 12 over 28, and my y-intercept is 0, comma negative 3. Always make sure that you have it inside parentheses. Questions on that one? Let's take a look at the next two. Now, these next two, something weird happens in both of these problems, all right? So I'm going to do these. Something weird happens, so just watch. In this one, we want to try and get that negative 2y all by itself. So we want to do minus 2x and minus 2x. So now we have negative 2y equals, again, I can't subtract those, but I want to switch around the order to be negative 2x plus 4. This says negative 2 times y, so I want to divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2. Negative 2 divided by negative 2. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is a positive 1x. 4 divided by negative 2 is negative 2. This would be perfectly acceptable as an answer. However, the more mature way to write it, if this was a multiple choice, for example, on a Regents exam, the more mature way to write this one would be to not put the x there, not put the 1 there, and just have it as y equals x minus 2. Right? Typically, the more mature way to write it, the more mathematically sophisticated way is without the 1 in front of the x. Your slope is 1, right? Because that's the number in front of the x. Or you could put 1 over 1. Either of those would be perfectly fine. Your y-intercept is 0, negative 2. Now, in this next one, something completely different happens. Very, very important example because this happens quite often. We're trying to get this 2y all by itself. So we're going to do minus x and minus x. So we have 2y equals, again, I want to switch around the order so that the x comes first. So I have negative x plus 8. Our next thing is to get the y all by itself. So we want to divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. Pay special attention right here. Something weird happens here. We have negative x divided by 2. Now, let's think about it. Anytime that you have a letter all by itself, there's really a 1 in front of it. So there's technically a 1 in front of that x. So that's really negative 1x over 2, which is really just negative 1/2 x. So that 1 won't be there, but you have to put an x there. Sometimes it'll be just a positive x, and you'll have to divide it by 2. Technically, there's a 1 in front of it, so that would again become 1/2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So our slope is negative 1/2, and our y-intercept is 0, 4. Again, something weird happens in this one too. All right, so I want to show you it. Trying to get this negative 4y all by itself, we need to do minus x and minus x. So we have negative 4y equals, I can't subtract these, but I want to switch around the order. So negative x minus 16. Divide by negative 4, and negative 4. Be very, very careful right here. Just like with the negative 1/2 in the previous problem, there is technically a 1 in front of that x. So this is really negative 1 divided by negative 4. Negative divided by a negative is a positive, so I can change this to be positive 1/4. Negative 16 divided by negative 4 is a positive 4 or plus 4. So my slope is 1/4 and my y-intercept is 0, 4. Go ahead and try this next one on your own, please. Go ahead and try the next one on your own, please. This one is a little bit different. All right, this one's a little bit different because notice that there's no number in front of that y. Now, technically, there's a 1 there. All right, but this one's going to be just less steps. Minus 2x minus 2x. I can't subtract those, but I want to switch around the order. Negative 2x minus 8. Do I need to divide by anything? No, I already have the y all by itself. So that's my answer. I don't need to do any of this dividing step. Now, technically, you could put the 1 there and divide everything by 1 if you wanted to, but you don't need to. So our slope is negative 2, or you could put negative 2 over 1, either way. and our y-intercept is 0, comma, -8. Now, all of these problems that we did so far had the original equation in standard form. We had an x and then a y and then a plain number. You're going to have questions that are not in standard form. All right, notice that all of these in this first one are all on the left-hand side of the equal sign. Our goal is still the same. Our goal, no matter what the problem looks like, is to get that y equals all by itself. So different problems are going to be solved different ways. In this first one, we want to try and get this 8y all by itself. So one of the things that we could do first is get rid of that -11 by doing +11 and +11. So now I would have 2x plus 8y equals 11. Now it looks like a standard form one. So now I want to subtract 2x, subtract 2x. I would have 8y equals, I can't subtract those, but I'm going to switch around the order. So -2x plus 11. The last thing that I'm going to do is divide by 8, divide by 8, divide by 8. So I get -2/8 x plus 11/8. Right? That plus 11/8, I would change that to a decimal. All right? Slope you can leave as a fraction. Slope we can leave as -2/8. If you wanted to reduce it, that would be fine. It would reduce to be -1/4. But this 11/8, you definitely want to change that. All right. Y-intercepts are not written as fractions. They're written as decimals. So 11 divided by 8 gives you 1.375. That would be the y-intercept there. Take a look at this middle column one. In this middle column one, notice that they have the 2y all by itself already. All right. This is not in standard form. Since the 2y is by itself already, they basically already did down to right here, down to this like last part of the red here in the previous problem. They already did that top part for you, getting the y all by itself. So this is just divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. And they're trying to trick you by writing it backwards. So those cancel out. I'm going to move my y equals to the front. 4 divided by 2 is 2x. 15 divided by 2 is 7.5. So my slope is 2, or you can put 2 over 1. And my y-intercept is 0.0, 7.5. Go ahead and try this next one on your own, please. Go ahead and try that next one on your own. So we want to try and get that 4y all by itself. We get that 4y all by itself by doing -10 and -10. So we have 4y equals -2x minus 10. Now notice I didn't switch around the order there because I didn't have to. All right, the x already came first before the plain number. Now you have 4 times y. The opposite of times is divide. So divide by 4, divide by 4, divide by 4. -2 divided by 4. I could just leave that as a fraction. Could you reduce it to be -1/2? Sure. X. -10 divided by 4 is -2.5. Again, that third number, we don't want to leave as a fraction. We always want to change that third thing to a decimal. The slope in front of the x, we can leave as a fraction. So our slope was either -2/4, or if you want to reduce it, -1/2. Our y-intercept is 0, -2.5. Take a look at the next one. This next one goes by very, very quickly. You have a y that's all by itself. So all we need to do is get rid of that plus 3x by doing minus 3x and minus 3x. 4 minus 3x, all I need to do is switch around the order, and bam, there's your answer. All right, you don't have to divide anything in this one because there was no number. Yes, there's technically a 1, but there was no number other than 1 in front of the y, so you didn't have to divide by anything. Your slope, therefore, is -3, or you can put -3 over 1. And your y-intercept is 0, 4. Go ahead and try the middle one, please. Go ahead and try the middle one on your own, please. So trying to get this 2y all by itself, you need to get rid of the minus 2x by doing plus 2x and plus 2x. So I have 2y equals, switching around the order, 2x plus 1. Divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. Again, be very, very careful. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Could I have left it as 2 over 2? Sure. I could just change it to be 1x, though. And then 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. So my slope is 1 or 1 over 1. Or if you left it as 2 over 2. All of those would be perfectly acceptable answers for a slope. Y-intercept is 0, 0.5. Now, something weird happens in this next one. All right, watch what happens in this next one. To get that negative y all by itself, I need to do minus x and minus x. So I have negative y equals negative x plus 2 when I switch it around. Be careful. We don't want negative y. There's really a 1 in front of that. So I need to divide by -1, divide by -1, divide by -1. That way I can get the y equals all by itself. Now you have to be careful here as well. There's really a -1 in front of that x. So we have -1 divided by -1. -1 divided by -1 is a positive 1x. 2 divided by -1 is -2. Now, again, the more mature way to write this, if it was a multiple choice question, would just be y equals x minus 2. Slope is 1, or you could put 1 over 1. Y-intercept, 0, -2. So be very careful there. This next one is another weird one. Let me show you what happens. So getting the y all by itself, you have to do plus 2x and plus 2x. You get the y all by itself, 0 plus 2x. Now, technically, you could put 2x plus 0. But again, the more mature way is just to have y equals 2x. If this was a multiple choice question on your Regents exam, you wouldn't see the plus 0 there. They would just put y equals 2x. Your slope, therefore, would be 2 or 2 over 1. Your y-intercept, again, technically there's a 0 there, so it would be 0, 0. So be very, very careful there. Go ahead and try this next one on your own, please. Go ahead and try this next one on your own, please. Getting the negative 2y all by itself, we have to do minus 2x and minus 2x. So I have negative 2y equals, switching around the order, negative 2x plus 4. Now I want to try and get rid of that negative 2. So divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is a positive 1. Bring down your x. 4 divided by negative 2 is minus 2. So our slope is either 1 or 1 over 1. Our y-intercept is 0, negative 2. Go ahead and try that last one. This is our last question. Go ahead and try this last one on your own, please. So trying to get this 2y all by itself, we need to do minus x and minus x. So we have 2y equals negative x plus 8 when you switch around the order. Then we want to divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. Now, again, be very, very careful. That says negative x. Remember, anytime you have a letter by itself, there's really a 1 in front of it. So this is really negative 1/2 x. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So our slope is negative 1 over 2. Our y-intercept is 0, 4. Questions on any of these?